Right. Good morning once again.
Nice.
So I know, Alpha, were you able to continue that project?
Yeah, I'm doing it, but I'm not yet. I have not yet finished it because I re-downloaded the app again. I start from the scratch and start building it again. So I haven't really finished everything.
Okay, so let's be hopeful that before next week Tuesday, it should be ready. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah. Because because even the anaconda, so I'm also
okay,
trying to meet up with that because
okay,
I've lagged behind in that too. So
okay. So we are looking at the last aspect of CSS, which is called CSS Animation. Let me create a different file for it. CSS Animation .html. It's my default file. CSS Animation. CSS Animation. Right. So after this section, after this part, it means that we are through with HTML and CSS. That I think of entering JavaScripts, but we look at the back end development. So let's start with the definition. What is CSS? What is CSS animation? What is CSS animation? So CSS animation allow you to animate. CSS animation allow you to animate. Let's say it allow you to animate HTML elements without using break it down, without using JavaScript. Command it it is used to create effects. So the keyword here is effects like fading, sliding, bouncing, uh, rotating, and more. So let me just break it down. So the word animation means effects or certain actions that can be programmed on an element. So the elements here represent HTML contents. Let's assume that you have an image in your web page, or you have a write-up in your web page, and you want that write-up to possess some effects like motions, which makes your website lively without even consulting JavaScript. That is what CSS animation does. That is exactly what we are saying. So if I have, for example, I have an image, just like I've explained, and I want the image not to remain static. That is, I want the image to move in a certain way that we end up a kind of entertaining the website users, or to make them to stay on the web page, because it makes that website look as if there is so much life in the website, instead of just adding those content without any effect on them. So that is why we need CSS animation. You know, all this while we have been learning CSS alongside with HTML, but this very aspect of CSS we want to look at is strictly for adding effects or motions to those same HTML content you have created. And apart from that, this session or this part of CSS is referred to as CSS 3.0, while the ones we have been learning since, those ones are recognized as CSS 2.0. So the CSS 2.0 is like the basic and the intermediate as CSS. Then the CSS 3 is also known as the advanced CSS. So all the CSS animation properties that we are going to be working with, they are under the advanced CSS, which are used to add effects to your HTML elements. So before the introduction of this set of CSS, people used to use JavaScript to add all forms of effect to their web content. And that is why if you look at that definition, I said without using JavaScript. So this is a kind of a concept that was introduced to relieve JavaScript. And most of the websites you see out there, most of those effects you see, most of the movements you see, they were not actually programmed with JavaScript. So somebody who have deep knowledge of the CSS will be able to create those effects. So the entire animation or the CSS animation can actually be broken into two categories. We have the basic aspect of it, then we have the advanced aspect of this animation. So for example, we can say the first category is what we want to focus on, which is known as CSS transform, and transition. So let me just make them together: CSS transform and transition. So under CSS animation, we talk about the basic aspect of it, which is under transform and what? Transition. So we are going to quickly look at this, and then before we look at the advanced. So the advanced is what we know as at keyframe, at keyframe. So this is the advanced aspect of this CSS animation. So to start with, let's look at the first one, which is CSS transform and transition. CSS transform and transition. So we'll look at their definitions. CSS transform changes an element shape, size. Let me break it down. CSS transform changes element. So anywhere I mention element, I'm talking about your HTML content, which could be H2 content, which could be P tag content. So when we say the CSS transform, changing the element shape, the size of the elements, and the position. So this is the focus of this one. So I'm actually introducing this transform under CSS animation. But meanwhile, we can decide to say it's not part of them, but there's a reason why I'm bringing it. Because we are talking about effects. So when we talk about changing size, changing shape, changing position, that is not supposed to be captured under animation, because animation has to do with motion. But because we blend them together, so we can now say that the major CSS animation property in JavaScript should be transition and what? The keyframe. But while we are attaching transform, because we want some changes before the what? The transition. Most time you see professionals using them together. So that is why I decided to what? To reflect it here as part of what we want to talk about. Right? So now let's look at a practical example of, now remember I said the transform changes element shape, size, and position. While let me complete the definition at once before we look at some practical example. While transition makes changes smooth. So it's going to change, but it will be changing gradually, smoothly. Just like you visit a web page and then you see a button. And when you hover on the button, you see that the button will be increasing gradually. Sometimes it can be shrinking gradually. That is transition. Transition, which means that what? Are changing from one state to another gradually. That is the function of transition. I hope you are following. All right, so let's take some example. Let's look at some examples, and that way concrete this explanation. So let's look at the example, and I'm going to start with the transform. And then mind you, the transform has 4 values, because if we are talking about changing shape, the size, and the position, we have transform translate. We have that one majors on changing the word, the size or the shape. Then we have the transform skew, that one changing the way you view it. We have the transform rotate, that one changing the angle of placement. And then we have another one. If I remember, I will let you know. But we have about 4 values for each of these. I think we have transform translate, transform rotate, transform skew, and transform what? Scale. So these are the 4 properties or values that can be used alongside with the transform. So just like you are going to see me applying now. So I want to start with the transform translate. So in my HTML, I'll create an element. For example, I'll create an element. So the element can be a div, it can be an image. So let me start with div. I'll try and use different elements. So let's say the class of this element is, I will just name it according to the very one I want to perform, which is translate. Let's say what? Translate hyphen box. So I will now come here and say what? Let's say move me, because we are talking about animation here. So this is the HTML element you want to transform. You want to change either its shape or you want to resize it without using all those CSS-based Z properties like width. So you can leverage on this transform to what? To effect all those changes. I hope you are following. Needed to hear
Yes,
from
sir.
you. Okay, good. So
Yes, sir.
now we go to the CSS section. So for CSS, I'll quickly use internal so that we can see everything. Of course, for internal, we have to create the style tag in the head section and then open it up. So this is a class element. So I will just copy it to avoid typographical error, and then come in here and then I paste it. But I need to add dots as we have already learned, and then before I declare my block. Now, the first thing I want to do is to declare the width of this element because it's a div that does not have any width. Sorry, it has 100% width with what? Maybe probably no height by default. So I need to make it look nice first. So in other words, I am just styling it just like the way we were styling with our CSS 2.0 before we now attach this effect using hover. So I believe you understand what is hover. In other words, when the user visits the website, they are going to meet the object with certain appearance. And when they now touch it, that is where your transition or your transform effect will come or will be displayed. That is what I'm doing. So right now I'm just styling the object first to give me a good appearance first. So I can just say, okay, 500 PS. And then I also want to add some heights. And then I want the height of 400 PS. And then I want to add a background to it. I want the background color of, let's say, red, right? So I want, now you see where I'm now adding the transition now. The transition, because we are talking about two of them at the same time. Transform, changing the shape, the size, and the position. While transition, make that change smoothly. So that is why you see me talking about the one is the one that will implement the changes. One is one that will determine how the changes will occur, whether it's going to change at once or it's going to change gradually. That is exactly what we are talking about. So I will say transition. I will say transition. I will say transform. So you can see that inside the transition, you are adding what? The transform. So transform, transition, transform. Then you define the size. Sorry, the second. The second, remember I said is in that is speed. So you say dot what? Maybe 0.5 second. Transition, transform, 0.5 second. And then how with the movement? The movement should be what? Ease. So we have ease because we talk about gradually what? Movement of it. Gradually movement of it. So we can say that it should move, it should change gradually as with ease. And then we have ease in, we have ease in and out. That is what ease in, that is what it will be coming out. One is what to be going in. So you can as well say what just ease out. So all these are the values you can use for the duration. So what we are defining here is like the duration. So I will say what is in. Let's say I'm using this, right? So now, how do I implement this effect? Like I said, if I go to the front end, let's see what we already have so that you can see what we are doing. Let's see what we I already have. So you can see what we have here already. What we have here already. So you can see that no effect. Now, for us to, so what we are saying is that for the effect, the animation effect to show, you want the user to hover on it. So that is how you implement it. So by default, they meet this object like this. When they touch it, that is where they should experience what? The effect. So which means that we are going to apply that transform properly under hover. So remember the syntax of hover. So I can just come here and say what? Adding hover bets. So the syntax for adding over is for you to copy this same URL. Sorry, the selector. Copy that same selector, and then you paste it. Then you add the column. Remember, I hope you still remember this over. Then you open the what? The hover code block. Now, the hover, what we want is that it should change either the shape, because that is the focus of the transform that I talk about. So I will say what? Transform, translate, because my focus is to change the shape, right? So I'll say what? Transform, translate. Remember, I told you that what we have 4 of the value. Transform, translate. You can translate vertically, you can translate horizontally. So translate, if you do not put X, that means you are translating what? Vertically, that is Y. So if you want it to translate horizontally, you now add what? X to this translate. So we can have it like that. Now, you now define the width, because we're talking about changing the shape. So this is what you normally do with width and height. Width, when you want to reduce the width of an element. But now, under CSS animation, we are using translate to achieve it. So I will say translate because the object can be translated from different angle, right? So just like the way when you were
Yeah.
using a width, you can say a width and height. So I can say
Yeah.
50, translate 50 PS. So if I put only one value, it means I'm translating only what? The y-axis. But if I put a comma and I put another value, let's say what? 20 PS. So which means that you are also translating along what? Two axes. So if I go back to the website now, you can see as I hover, did you see that movement? As I hover, did you see that movement?
Yes.
Good. Now, it can be an
Yes.
image. It can be a picture that you are programmed in your web page. That's what you want the user to touch it and then move like this. So let me apply it on the picture because I wanted to use a GIF. Let me apply it on a picture. So if I want to apply it on a picture, I'll go to my HTML section and just call what? Image tag, because most time we add all these things to pictures. So I just use that container so that you understand it first. So let's call in the pictures. I believe
Yeah.
I have some pictures here. Let's see, I have this. Let me check if I have, okay. So I have this. So I want to add that effect, but let me class it. Let me class this picture. Let me class it. Class it img underscore effect. img underscore effect. So if I go back to my CSS section now, let me just copy it to avoid typographical error copy. Then if you go back to my CSS, so let's say I paste it with a dot because it's a class element before I open my declaration block. Now I just want to take this so that we just modify it. I just want to take this property to save my time. Control C. Then I will add them here. Right, so I think there is a mistake. I think, yeah, I think I need to remove this selector because I'm not using the same selector. I need to remove this because I already have my selector declared. Right, so now I will also inherit this. Control C, just to make my work faster. Control C. Then I will just add over to this one. Let's say a hover effect. And then remember that our hover effect, let's take the hover effect from here. This is my hover effect. So I'm just taking these properties from here. Control C. And then I replace it with the whole of this. So if I go back to the front end now and I hover on the picture, you can see the movement. Now you can see that it's not moving far because of the width. So if I change it
Yeah.
to like 200 now, if I change it to like 200 and here, let's say 150, we have reasonable movement than the one we're having. So can you see that it went far? Now, this movement now, you can see the way is, you can see the speed. So you can set the speed here. If you want to delay it, you increase it. If you want to delay it, you increase it. So let's say I increase it to one minute. I can increase this
Or
to
1.5.
or
Okay.
1.5, or let's say what 1.5. 1.5. So if I go back now, did you see that it moved more gradually now? Are you
Yes.
getting it? Right. So if you
Yes, sir.
want to, you can see that it's better. So it's better. Good. So now, uh, you can see how we add that effect. So people like to visit website and see little effects like this that we encourage them to stay put. That is transform, translate. Now we can have transform, um, transform scale. Remember I said we have different types. We can come here and say transform scale, transform scale, transform scale. We can have it like this. So this one is to resize it. So I can say, okay, when they hover on it, let the objects increase by 1.5. 1.5. So if I go back there and say, did you see what happened? Transform scale. So it zooms out. See that you see the difference between, because the other one changes the position, right? But scale will reduce it. Can you see it? So you have a very smooth uh, zooming in and zooming out. I hope you are here. You can see it once you touch it, and then once you leave, it will what? To go back. That is transform what? Scale. I hope it's clear. Are you still here at all?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so that is you can also control this. You can say remember that there was another value there, is out. Remember I selected what is in, and then you go back and check. Can you see it? Good. Then you can select what just is in. So depending on how you play with them, then if you put something like uh, infinite, let's see whether that work. So you can see that that property is not meant for this. Where we get to time function, that is where we will use it. So let me leave it at this. So that is how to use uh, transform and transition. So now we have transform, rotate. Remember that I said there are 4 values, so I can change here to rotate just to have a different effect. Transform, rotate. Let's say when they hovers on it, it should rotate by 45 degrees. By 45 degrees. So let's go and check what we have with this. Can you see it? When they hover, you can see the way it's rotating. That is 45. So you can calculate your angle yourself. I can say, okay, rotate just by 30 degrees, depending on the one that will give you the effect. So when somebody touches this picture, they should have this effect, and then once they leave it, then it goes back. So that's you can also transform skill. Remember, I'm trying to qualify the 4 value. I've used translate, I have used scale, I've used rotate, then I'm using the last one now, which is skew. So you can change it to skew, So for skewing, then I can say skew to different degree. So skew along the vertical axis, I will just put a comma, because if you put just one value, if you put one value, it means you are specifying one axis. So if you put 2 value, let's say what, 10 degree, it means you are specifying what, 2 sides. So let's go and check. Did you see what happened? Did you see what skew is doing? Skew is, it's like changing the view. So these are effects, because when you enter a website and you see all these effects, you just be wondering, is it that they use JavaScript? No. These are basically effects that a developer can add to pictures, add to some tests. So it is not less for you to be creative, to know which of the elements you are to display this effect. So you need to apply creativity. It's not as if any content you have on the page, you add this transform transition. So you have to do it with certain calculations in a way that it will make sense. So that project that you are working on, everything that you are learning, I want to see you applying them. So choose some images within the website pages. Some can be in the home page, some can be in the service page, some can be in the product page. Then add this little word, transition and transform. So that brings us to the first aspect of CSS animation. So you can research more on this particular set that I've used. And there's some time where you are building a real website and you come across some effect that you do not understand. You can use ChatGPT to generate more effects. So, but I've just laid the foundation and I've practicalized what the 4 value that are connected to transform. So we'll now look at the main CSS animation. Remember, I told you that all these ones they are basic. They are basic. The CSS what? Transform and transition. So the main domain or the main bucket that has most of those fantastic CSS animation is what? The keyframe. So, and as we proceed, we are going to see the benefit of using keyframe to animate your element instead of using just transform and transition, right? So just to add to the definition of the CSS animation I gave to you, so CSS animation is a way to change the style of an element gradually over time. CSS animation is a way to change the style of an element gradually over time. So what are some of the things you can change, or what are some of the effects that can change gradually on an element. Number one, you can change the color of an element gradually. You can change the position gradually. You can resize it, you can rotate it, you can fade it in and fade it out. That is enveloped in what I have broken down. So now we'll now talk about the two main CSS animation. The two main what? CSS animation. So that is the section I want us to discuss now. The two main CSS animation. The two main CSS animation. Just give me a few minutes. So the two main CSS animation. Number one, we have at keyframe. At keyframe. Every web developer that's a professional knows about keyframe. So what is keyframe? Keyframe defines what the animation will do. And it can allow us to sequence different animation. That is what you can say between 0 to 20%. Show this effect. Between 20% to 40%, show another effect. Between 30% or maybe between 50% to 75%, show another one. Between 75% to 100, show another one. So this is the kind of effect you see that most objects uses, whereby you see objects, showing different effects, simultaneously. So that is the work of at keyframe, but that transition cannot break it into what? Percentage or section. So when you want to create multiple effects on an object, you don't depend on transition or transform. You depend on the key frame. So let's look at the basic syntax of the keyframe. How are we expected to speak it? So the syntax is that the main object you are looking at should have its own effects, should have its own standard styling, just like I did the other time. I took my time to define the width of the div, the height first, before I added the transition and the transform. So now after that, that particular element must have animation name. Then the name that you add to that object is what you will use as your animation keyframe. For example, if I may just highlight the syntax here. So if I say syntax, how are we expected to speak it? So you say at keyframe, followed by the animation name, name, and then before you open the coiling brackets, then all the sequence of the effect or the animation properties will be declared here. So you can say that between 0%, you want an effect. Maybe the effect is that the color should be red. That is for that one. Then you now come, while you are still inside this keyframe, You say, okay, between 30%, you want the color again, the color to be maybe blue. Then you come again between 50%, you want the color to be maybe green. Want the color to be green. Then, of course, you have to range it to 100. So you can jump as, okay, when it's at 100%, then it should change to the same color should be, let's say, black. So you can see the way we are able to what? We are able to sequence multiple what effects on one object. But another thing again is that the object itself must be declared with the animation name. So which means that I will come here, I will say, okay, the main element we are talking to, let's say this is that image. So I will say what? IMG, then you open its own CSS, then maybe probably you do its own width, and then maybe the width should be 500 PS, 500 PS. Maybe the height should be the same 500 PS. And then you will now add animation name. Animation name is a property, animation, or you can just say, you can write animation, or you say animation. Then that name must correspond with the name you use here. So if I'm saying what, the name of it is what? Slide. The name of this is slide. Then in the keyframe where you are defining your sequence of effects, that same slide is what you must use, is what you must attach to the what? To the keyframe what? That is how you are connecting this effect to this object, because the name of that keyframe is mentioned inside this image selector. So that is the link. So now let's look at the application properly. Let's look at how we can apply this and see just like what I just said now. So our image, let's go to the CSS. So I will just take this. Where is the image? Our image class is this. Let me try it on the div. In fact, let me create another element so that we can understand it. So let's say a div, we have a div width, we have a div, and then let me just give it a different class, Then I can just say, okay, the other one was a div boss. Let's give this one boss. And then we are not putting anything inside. If you like, you can say welcome to Digitech. Welcome to Digitech Zeal Hub. Welcome to Digitech Zeal Hub. Now, like I said, the object itself need to have its own default. Now, remember, sometime I told you that you can create your CSS here immediately, but you have to bring in the what? You have to bring in the style. So it's not compulsory that the style must only be in the what? The head section. But just to make our code neater, that is why we always package them there. We can actually open a style anywhere and what? Write your CSS. You want to say something?
No.
Okay. So I can come here and quickly say what? Dot box. I noticed there's background sound there. That's why I muted it. Okay. So now this is the actual object now. So the actual object, let me give it some width without the animation. Let me give it some width, also 500 PS. Then let me give it some height. height, let's say 400 ps. Then let me give it background color. All these ones, they are just standard appearance of the elements you want to add the animation on. Okay, let's say the background, the default background color should be should not be any of those colors that we have already programmed, because I'll copy this format and paste it in. Now I will now come here, like I just told you, the name of the animation must be defined inside the main object styling. So which means I will say animation. Then I will just say the animation is color, because color we want to work on. Let's say animation is what? Color. Now, after this, then we can now go to the art keyframe. We can now go to the art keyframe. Outside this, you now come here, you now say what? Art keyframe, art keyframes. Then remember the animation name, which is color. So you supply that color, and then you open the bracket. So now I will take those color range that I define. I'll take those color range from here direct. So I'm taking this, then I'll come here, paste them here. That is what, at this different percentage, the object will be changing color. That is what we are saying. Between 0 to 30, you will see red. Between 30 to 50, you will see blue. Between 50 to 100, you will see what? Black. That is what you are trying to program here. So after this, now let's go back and see how we will see the impact of this object. Here is it here. So you can see. So now, let's say we want to display these effects. Let's say we want to display this effect properly. We can now use, what will I use now to display them? We have color, let me see. We have to put a time frame. That is what is missing here. So let me add it here. 0.5 second. And then let's say what? Timing. We will now say infinite. That is what they will continue to display. Can you see what is happening on that test? Can you see a kind of blinking? It's blinking what? Continuously. Now, the reason why it's showing, I want to get a reply from whether you are seeing what I'm doing. Can you see the effect on that test that is displaying continuously? Let me get a
Yes, sir.
Good. Why?
Yes, sir.
Because what you define here is color, not background color. So if I want the background color
Yes.
to be blinking like that, then I will change this property to what? Background color,
Background
red.
color.
Then here I'll change it to, because it's the background that I want to change this color. So I'll come here also, I'll say background color. I'll come here also, I'll say background color. Now remember what I added here. This is where I define the speed. If you don't add this and this, nothing will trigger it. That is why after this, you have to add this. This one is animation duration. This one is animation timing function. So it's just like a shorthand. So I will have just called animation duration and say what? 0.5. Animation timing function and say what? Infinite. But I just put everything in one line to make it faster. So if I come here now, you see what is happening. So you can create a web page whereby the entire body background, that background that we give to the entire document, you can make it to be changing gradually. So now let's go back and is too fast. So this is where we control it from the transform and transition I just taught you now. If you increase it to 2 points, and you go back, you see that what it will move, slower. You can see that will make more sense. Sometimes you can even can increase it so that it doesn't move too fast. So I can come here and say, okay, even 3.5, so that it will not over distract other things. So we increase it so that it will just be. Now let's say is the entire page background that we are applying this on, because that is where to make sense. When somebody comes to the page, we want the person to be seeing the background page changing gradually. So what we are going to do is just to change this to what? Body. And body is not class, so you just say what? Body. And then you also change, I think that is all, you change this to body. So if I go back to the website now, let's check so you can see it now, is the entire what? Page or document background that will be changing colors. I hope that is clear. Welcome, Flourish.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for joining late.
Sorry, sir. Sir, please, that linear that they used to put, what does it mean? After infinite.
Linear is to give you something like this, but to blend 2 or 3 colors together in a straight line. That's where you do background color. The inside background color, you now put what? Linear gradient, right? Linear gradient. Then you now start defining. We learned that under when we were dealing with page background now, when we added image together, when we blend image inside, or when we combine multiple background color. So now let's do something else. Let's say this picture now. This picture that we have added this to now, we added this effect is generated by the what is it called? The transform transition. So let's say this kind of effect now I want to add it to the picture at keyframe. So I can just say, let me look for the picture class name. I think I have it here. Where is the picture class name? Here is the picture class name. Okay, the picture class name is effect, sorry, img. So let me take this. So I want to use this same keyframe to add some effect to it. So if I say this, and then I open this, so I will say the effect first. I think I will have just created another image to avoid the confusion, except I turn off. Let me see where I have styled it. Yeah, let me comment this out for now. So let's say I'm styling this. Basic width of this picture should be maybe 600 ps. Basic height of this picture maybe it should be 450 ps. Then remember I will add animation. Let me just take this, Control C, and then I can just change the name to what? IMG. Then your keyframe, come outside, you do add keyframe. The name identifier will be what? IMG. Now, this is the standard width of this. But what I want is that when the user click on, when they get to the page, I want the image size to be changing. The size should be changing. So I will just say at 0%, I want the width of that picture that is this by default, to be 700 ps. Then between 30, you can spread it in a way that you have multiple effects. The width, that same width, should reduce to 500 ps. And then between 30 to 40 40%, the width should be 300. So I want it to be reducing. So you calculate it in a way that will make sense. Then between 50, I want it to keep reducing. Between 50%, I want the width to be 200 ps. Then between these 200, let me just stop it here. 100, I want the width to be, I want the width to be what should I put it there? I want the width to be 150 ps. Then 150 ps. Then okay, so let's see. So we have also specified how it's going to move. It should move continuously. So if we go back there, you see the picture now, you see the effect I add now. So somebody can just get to the website and be seeing this effect. So now let me also add some height so you can see it. So these are little things that when somebody see them, even a fellow professional might think that you use JavaScript to create one massive effect. And it's just you calculating the effect and you program it to play infinite. That's what it shouldn't stop so that they will keep seeing it. So I can say, okay, I can copy the whole of this, Control C, while you are still inside the keyframe, because I noticed as it's moving, the height is not balancing. The proportion of the height is making the image not look right. So what I will do is that I will change here to height. So this should also change here to height, and then the height, while the width is showing 700, the height should be something less than that so that the image appearance will still be balanced. So let me also modify this to height. While the width is showing 500, I want the height to be 300. While the width is showing the height of 300 should go to, let's say what? Let's say 150. I hope we are following. You can see the way I'm trying to calculate an effect. So what I'm doing, I'm calculating effect. Calculate an effect. Then here, I'll say 50. And then, okay, let me check it and see whether we've got to. Can you see what is happening now? Can you see you have modified the effect? Look at the way it's moving, and then to not take the height. So these are simple calculation you can do. It's just for you to sit down and see how you can come up with this effect. You can develop the effect yourself. Because if you go to ChatGPT now, yes, except you are able to describe exactly what you want. Any questions so far? Any question? Any question, please, so that we can. Let me see if I can look at. Any question?
Sir,
Yes.
I don't have a question. I have a request though.
Okay.
Sir, please, can you help me and help me and resolve that problem I posted on group
Are you
about
joining?
that
Are you joining?
slideshow?
Are you joining with your laptop?
No, no, no.
So how do I resolve it? I need to see your code. So I will look at it together. Is your
If you
laptop
can
not
just
up?
one sample, then I'll use it to do correction.
No, this is not a matter of sample. It's to look at the effect you combine there. I think it was sliding now, Abi. So I need to look at,
Yes, slide.
yeah, it was sliding and you generated the code with ChatGPT now, Abi. Or
No,
you created it.
I didn't generate.
Is it part of the one we
Yes, I
did?
created it.
That is
I
why I need to
used
see
CSS animation.
animation, right? Now, can you remember the animation properties you use so that we can know which one? Because there are so many
Mm,
properties, so I wouldn't know which one that
wait,
you
let me
use.
let me.
Is the system not on? Can't you turn it on?
I'm owning it now. Let me check the battery because I charged it a little yesterday.
We're on it so that let's just see the code. If I see the code, then I'll be able to know where. So this is what you have under CSS animation. We look at transition, transform. So our assignment, you are to go and research more. There are a lot of effects. So the assignment when you are researching, research on CSS what text keyframe effect, images keyframe effect. So all those elements, those content that you have been developing, personalize it so that probably ChatGPT can give you a customized effect for text, the one for images, and then once you copy it and paste it with what we have done, you know what to tamper with and you know how to adjust it. Or you can just decide to sit down and calculate the effect yourself. So this is to say that we have come to the end of HTML and CSS. Let's go and update CSS animation in that project that we are developing. So the next class, I am going to look at that project first, and then we will start looking at JavaScript. Mr. Collins, hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let me just wait for her to, let's see if we can help her out on the challenge, and then we end the session.